Okay, so we're going to assume that we went through all of our hiring, we did the right interviewing, we made the offer, you passed your drug test. Welcome on board, Greg. So now I want to talk a little bit about, and this will go in later into retaining people, is making sure you hire people well and then making them feel welcome and getting them to know the expectations so they start off right. Because if they start off right, they can stay right. If they don't start off right, they don't know the expectation and neither do you. So orientation is that immediate, that first day, that first week. You know, what do we have? Is there a checklist? What's the systems and procedure? What are our rules? How do you call me? How do you call off? What's your login? What's, you know, it's very task oriented. Okay, it goes over the handbook, all the paper they've just done. Then they go, okay, now I'm going to hand you off to Michelle. Michelle's going to walk you around the facility, and then Terry's going to talk to you about safety, and you know. So that's orientation. Okay, it's immediate. Longer is more of style, culture, fit, how-tos. How do you best get things done here? Who do you go to? Who likes to be worked with in the morning? Who's crabby in the morning? You know, it's all those cultural kind of things to envelop someone into the culture and the family, show them around, be their buddy, be their mentor. That could be formal, it could be informal. You know, you have 19 people, you probably aren't going to have a formal process. You have 100, you might. Say the first 30 days, your formal buddy is Michelle. Any questions, you go to Michelle first, and then if it's more, you know, important, you go to Sonya in HR, but you set that up so you're getting them integrated in that first few days, then that first few months really well. You're much more likely to have success. Okay, when we talk about retention and turnover, a lot of times big companies will chart how many people do we lose in the first 90 days. If you lost people in the first 90 days, you didn't follow all the steps. You made some mistakes along the way. There's no way you could have done all of the things and lost someone in 90 days, unless, you know, they're hired into an entry-level job just as a stopgap to another job. Okay, I'll give you that one. But other than that, you really want to make sure you're hiring well, they fit in well, you welcome them, make them feel comfortable so that they can be successful. Company handbook's obviously important to integrate because you're going over the rules, the expectations, the how-tos, everything's there in writing, you're giving it to them, they're signing it right, you're keeping a copy, you're putting it in their file. We all do that, right? Nod your heads, yes, great. If you don't, then you need to see us. Because this goes over things like the mission's values, but it also goes through fairness and rules and expectations. And quite honestly, it's your company, okay? It's your people, it's your resources. You're allowed to say, no, Susie, you cannot use our computer to surf eBay and buy new shoes all day. You're allowed to do that. But you need to tell them that, have it in writing so they know that. Maybe they don't know that. Maybe Susie bought all her shoes at her last job. So, you know, you want to make sure that those rules are there. But if you have a handbook, the biggest thing is be consistent. Follow the rules, okay? You don't have to have to finite every single rule in this handbook so it's so difficult to follow, because then why bother at all? You need to follow it consistently, or it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. I fired Greg, but I didn't fire Kevin. I mean, Keith. I didn't fire Keith, but it was the exact same situation. Well, you're setting her up for discrimination, fairness lawsuits, things like that. Document retention is always a question of HR people, so I want you to know the resources are out there. What do I need to keep? How long do I keep it? There are resources for that. It depends on the form, depends on the size of your company, lots of things. There are required posters. We all know that, right? Shake our heads again. Yes. Okay, got a poster up that says, yes, I'll pay Sonya at least $4 an hour, whatever minimum wage is, right? All those things.
Coming at the end of this month?
There is a new one. If you just ordered your posters, it might already be on there from the National Labor Board. So there's things. But you know what? The funny thing is they said it's like require this, but they won't fine you this year. So, you know, don't think you have to run out and buy a new poster today just because we said so.
Actually,
but they're
all available on the internet.
Right.
Every EEOC, all these government sites have the posters on the internet that you can just print off black and white. Are they as pretty as the nice laminated posters? No, but they do the job.
If they're required, then they have to provide it. You have a nice PDF. If you want to get a $20 laminated one with everything on it, we have a spot on our website that you can do that. We started the seminar today with all these things you need to know, right? Because really this is what kills us in the HR. This is why we get the reputation of being just a cost center and just all about paper and blah, blah, blah. But you have to be tactical. You need to know this. You have to have the forms in place. You have to do everything right so that you can then be more strategic and more operational so that you're helping the company. But if you screw these things up in the beginning, you don't get the chance to solve them later. So this is what you need to know. Are all of these applicable, every single one of these, to maybe your small company? Not necessarily. But a lot of them are. But in the last 5 years, the ones at the bottom, you know, GINA came out, Pension Protection Act, ADAAA, you know, I mean, there's a lot that changes. And you need to have good resources, either legal counsel, HR, benefits. I mean, there's a lot of legislative changes, and it's impossible sometimes to keep up with your industry stuff, your clients, and then all these other things that kind of happen somewhere in DC or Columbus. So just make sure that you're aware. Again, resources are available. Okay, diversity, we talked about EEOC, diversity resources. EEOC has a site, it has a lot of good tests on there. Should someone be exempt, non-exempt, salaried, we can talk a little bit about that, because that goes to how do I pay my employees. The next thing is, okay, we knew how to hire them, right? We did hire them, we onboarded them, but how do we pay them? Okay, this is really critical to the success of your organization as well, is knowing where you are in the market. Do I have the reputation of being the architectural design provider? Are we the boutique firm? Are we the high end? So we might want to lead in salary then, because I want to get the best people. I want Sonya, I want the best HR manager to work at Vocon, because that's the reputation we have, and that's what we need to exhibit. Now, we might be in a growth phase where we don't have that reputation that we're building, so we need to hire some younger entry-level people. We can develop them internally, things like that. We might need to lag a little bit for financial reasons. There's a lot of reasons to know, but the reason I tell you to know that up front is so that you're consistent. Okay? So if you get Lyndon as an executive and you get Jennifer as an entry-level worker, are they both at the leading of their job, or are they both at the lagging of their job? Is it fair across the company? Now, I'm not going to pay my entry-level worker the same rate I'm going to pay my executive, but I'm going to pay them in a fair range. Does that make sense? You just want to know that you're paying fairly. So what's your strategy? And then you need to know, do I have to pay her hourly, or can I pay her a salary? Do I have discretionary power with my company? Do I have authority? Do I manage people? Do I make decisions? Do I interpret and determine policies, or do I just follow them? Okay, you can have an administrative assistant who is totally a secretary. Administrative, she should be hourly. But you might have an office manager, an executive secretary, or an executive administrative assistant, whatever the title is, in another company who runs the show. Let's be honest, right? Because we know you run the show, right? When they're not around. So if you have discretionary where you're doing the hiring, you're making the policies, things like that, then that administrative person could be salaried. Now, the reason that they're exempt is they're exempt from overtime rules, which means if I paid, we'll use as an example, if I paid you hourly, when you hit 45 hours, because Kevin's working you to death, I have to pay overtime for the 5 extra hours, right? If she's salaried, I can work her to 50 to 55 hours, and I don't have to pay her any overtime. But she has to be eligible for that exemption, meaning the position itself, not the person, but the position has to be exempt level. Okay?
And not the title.
Not the
you
title.
You just can't put somebody as vice president of administration when they're the receptionist.
Right. Okay. Because what's going to happen is the title is going to be tied to the job description, and if I ever came in and wanted to do an EEOC, an audit on your hourly rate, wage and hours, then what I'm going to look at is, does the description describe to me an exempt level person? Then I'm going to say to you, what do you really do? Well, does what you really do match the job description? Is it really an exempt level position? Ultimately, the company makes the decision, but hopefully with guidance from the Department of Labor. They have actual tests you can do right on the FLSA site. I think it's within this one in the Department of Labor, and it'll say, do they make X amount of dollars? Yes. Let you go to the next question. Do they manage people? Yes. Okay, go to the next one. And if you say no, it says no, they cannot be exempt. So there's ways to make the decisions, but again, it goes back to my slide with the arrows. Start knowing that in advance. Because you're not hiring a person, you're hiring for the role. Now, it could change. You could say, well, instead of an entry-level admin, I found this great office manager who could do so much more. Then you'd be changing the whole job. You'd be changing the job description, then you could change exempt status. But these are just things that you need to know in advance. Because the other parts of how do I pay is, do I want to keep them? So what incentives, what differentials might I do for shift differentials? What perks do I have? What's fair? You know, what is the job market paying? All these things go into paying people and getting them to stay. Because ultimately you want to pay them fair so it's equitable to the company, but we want Maureen to stay. We've got her now, we want her to stay and develop her. So what is important to her? Sometimes you have to survey your people to find out what's important.